Some women are stolen from their beds in the dead of night. Others are taken in broad daylight, before witnesses, with vows still warm on their lips. The cruelty isn't in the taking, it's in making everyone watch, powerless to stop it. Mira had learned early that being perfect meant being invisible. In the Silverpaw Pack, daughters were raised to be seen but never truly noticed, beautiful enough to attract a strong mate, obedient enough not to cause trouble, and above all, capable of bearing powerful heirs. Mira checked every box except the one that mattered most. She could shift. Her wolf was strong, her bloodline pure, but her beast was wrong. Where other she-wolves emerged sleek and powerful, Mira's wolf was smaller, her coat a peculiar silver white that seemed to glow under moonlight. Worse, she was silent. Other wolves could communicate through their bond, their thoughts weaving together in the pack mind. Mira's wolf was mute, cut off, isolated, even in her shifted form, defective. The pack healer had declared when Mira was 12, the bond is malformed. She'll never fully integrate with a mate's consciousness. Any alpha bonded to her will have a gap in his connection. Her father's face had gone ashen. A she-wolf who couldn't fully bond was a liability. What alpha wanted a mate he couldn't read, couldn't fully control through the sacred bond? For years, Mira had made herself useful in other ways. She'd learned healing herbs, studied pack law, made herself indispensable to her father's beta operations. She'd hoped that perhaps her value could transcend her flaw. Then Gareth Ironpaw had asked for her hand. He was the alpha of the Ironpaw Pack, their neighbors to the east, a widower whose first mate had died in childbirth. He needed heirs. He needed an alliance. And he'd made it clear he didn't care about the bond. I don't need to read her thoughts. He'd told Mira's father over negotiations. I need her obedience and her womb. The rest is sentiment. Her father had accepted immediately, relief flooding his features. At 23, Mira had been on the verge of becoming an unmarriageable burden. Now she would be an alpha's mate, her flaw rendered irrelevant by Gareth's indifference. She should have been grateful. The wedding preparations had consumed 3 months. Her mother had fussed over every detail, the dress of ivory silk, the crown of mountain flowers, the ceremonial markings, painted across her shoulders to signify her transition from daughter to mate. You're lucky, her younger sister Kaya had whispered the night before the ceremony, braiding Mira's hair. Gareth is powerful, respected. You'll want for nothing. Mira had nodded, swallowing the words she couldn't say, that Gareth's eyes were cold when he looked at her, that his touch, though never cruel, felt clinical, that she'd overheard him tell his beta, once she's bred, I'll barely need to see her. But what choice did she have? A flawed she-wolf couldn't afford to be particular. The ceremony had been beautiful. The Silverpaw Pack's ceremonial grounds were decorated with silver ribbons and white roses. Alphas from neighboring packs had attended, a show of political unity. Mira had spoken her vows clearly, felt the ceremonial bond snap into place, thin and distant, but present. Gareth had kissed her with perfunctory efficiency. The feast afterward had stretched for hours. Mira had smiled until her face ached, accepted congratulations from wolves who'd once whispered about her defect, pretended not to notice the pitying glances from those who knew what kind of marriage awaited her. As twilight deepened into true night, Gareth had taken her hand to lead her to their marriage chambers. The guests had howled their approval, the traditional send-off for a newly mated pair. They'd nearly reached the private wing when the air itself seemed to change. The celebrating wolves fell silent, their instincts screaming danger before their minds could process why. A pressure descended over the gathering, so heavy that weaker wolves dropped to their knees. Mira's breath caught as three figures emerged from the darkness at the edge of the ceremonial grounds. The one in the center made her wolf whine in recognition of a predator so far above her in hierarchy that every instinct demanded she submit. He was tall, powerfully built, with dark hair and eyes like molten gold. He wore black, simple and elegant, with a silver wolf's head insignia over his heart, the crest of the Bloodmoon King. Alpha King Theron Bloodmoon, ruler of the 7 territories, hadn't been seen outside his fortress in over 5 years. Yet here he stood, uninvited, at her wedding feast. Gareth's hand tightened painfully around Mira's. "Your Majesty," he managed, his voice tight with shock. We weren't expecting." "No," Theron agreed, his voice deep and smooth as dark water. His golden eyes swept the frozen crowd before landing on Mira. "You weren't." The weight of his gaze pinned her in place. She couldn't look away, couldn't breathe. There was something ancient in those eyes, something that made her defective wolf press against her consciousness, not in fear, but in answer to a call Mira couldn't hear. "I've come," Theron said, still looking at Mira, "to claim what's mine." Gareth's growl rumbled through the stunned silence. "Your Majesty, there must be some mistake. My mate." "Is not your mate," Theron interrupted, his voice carrying absolute authority. "The bond you formed tonight is false, incomplete." Mira's heart hammered against her ribs. How could he possibly know about her defective bond? She'd never met the Bloodmoon King, had never even been within 100 miles of his territory. The ceremony was performed correctly. Her father stepped forward, his voice shaking despite his attempt at firmness. "Witnessed by 3 alphas and blessed by—" "I don't care if it was blessed by the moon goddess herself," Theron said, his golden eyes never leaving Mira's face. "She bears my mark." The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. Mira's hand flew to her shoulder, where the ceremonial wedding paint still decorated her skin. "I don't understand. I've never—" "Not that mark," Theron said quietly, and there was something almost gentle in his tone now. "The one you were born with." Heat flooded Mira's face as understanding crashed over her. The birthmark. The small, crescent-shaped mark at the base of her spine that she'd always hidden, always been ashamed of. Her mother had called it unseemly, had made sure it was always covered. "A birthmark means nothing," Gareth snarled, pulling Mira closer to his side possessively. "She is legally bound to me." The ceremony was interrupted before consummation, Theron observed, "which means it can be dissolved." This is insane," Gareth's beta interjected. "You can't just steal another alpha's mate because of some superstition about a birthmark." Theron's expression didn't change, but the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I can do whatever I wish. I am the Bloodmoon King." He paused, letting that sink in. "But I'm not here to steal. I'm here to claim what was promised to me 23 years ago." Mira's mother made a small, strangled sound. Her father had gone completely white. "No," her father whispered. "That's not we were told you were dead," the messenger said. "The messenger lied," Theron said flatly. "A courtesy I extended to spare your daughter the burden of waiting for a king who might never return from war. But I have returned, and now I've come to collect." "Collect?" Mira finally found her voice, anger cutting through her fear. "I'm not property to be collected. I don't know what arrangement you think you had with my parents, but I just married—" "A bond formed under false pretenses," Theron cut her off. "Your parents promised you to me when you were born. That crescent mark? It's not a birthmark. It's a king's seal, placed there by the moon goddess herself to mark you as mine." The world tilted beneath Mira's feet. "That's impossible. King's seals are legends. Legends I saw placed on your infant body by my own mother, the queen, before she died, Theron said. His voice carried an edge of old pain. We were betrothed in the old way, bound by magic and moon oath. Your parents accepted my family's bride, price land, protection, and a blood promise. Mira's father was shaking his head frantically. The messenger told us you'd been killed in the Northern Wars. We waited 5 years, but when your beta came and said, I had no beta, Theron said coldly. Someone sent you a lie, and rather than verify it, you accepted it as truth, because breaking a moon oath to a dead king carried no consequences. His eyes hardened. But I am not dead, and moon oaths don't break just because they're inconvenient. Prove it, Gareth demanded. If what you say is true, prove the mark is yours. Theron moved then, crossing the distance between them with supernatural speed. Gareth snarled and shifted partially, his claws extending, but one of Theron's guards, a massive man with ice-blue eyes, was suddenly there. His hand around Gareth's throat. I wouldn't, the guard said pleasantly. Theron stopped inches from Mira. This close, she could feel the heat radiating from him, smell pine and midnight, and something wild that made her defective wolf whine with longing. May I? He asked, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. Mira didn't know what he was asking permission for, but she found herself nodding. His hand moved to her shoulder, fingers ghosting over the ceremonial paint. Then he spoke a single word in a language Mira didn't recognize, something ancient and powerful that resonated in her bones. The crescent mark at the base of her spine flared with heat. Not painful, but intense, like sunlight concentrated through glass. Gasps rippled through the crowd as silver light began to glow beneath her dress, visible even through the fabric. Theron held up his right hand. On his palm, an identical crescent mark burned with the same silver light. The moon goddess binds what she wills, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the ceremonial grounds. And she bound this woman to me before she could walk. The mark recognizes its mate. The light faded. Mira stood frozen, her mind reeling. Everything she'd believed about herself, her future, her wedding, all of it was crumbling. This is theft, Gareth spat, but his voice had lost its conviction. Everyone could see the marks, the proof blazing between them. This is justice, Theron corrected. He finally looked away from Mira, his gaze sweeping over her parents. You broke a moon oath. The penalty for that is death. Her mother sobbed. Her father fell to his knees. However, Theron continued, I am not my father. I don't slaughter entire families for the sins of desperation. His eyes returned to Mira. I'll offer a choice. Come with me willingly. Honor the oath your parents made, and they live. Refuse. Force me to invoke the old laws and claim you by conquest, and this pack burns. Mira's throat closed. That's not a choice. That's extortion. Yes, Theron agreed simply. But it's the only one you have. The journey to Bloodmoon territory took 3 days by carriage, but Mira barely noticed the passing landscape. She sat rigid on the velvet seat, acutely aware of Theron sitting across from her, his golden eyes occasionally flickering in her direction. She hadn't spoken since they'd left. What was there to say? She'd agreed to come, not willingly, but she'd come. Her parents were alive, her pack was safe, and she was now the prisoner of a king she'd never known existed in her life. Theron's 2 guards rode alongside the carriage. The one who'd grabbed Gareth was named Callum, his cold blue eyes missing nothing. The other, a woman with copper hair and twin blades strapped to her back, was called Senna. Neither spoke unless Theron addressed them directly. You should eat, Theron said on the second day, gesturing to the untouched food beside her. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten since we left. I'm not hungry, she repeated, her voice flat. He studied her for a long moment, then leaned back. You're angry. Mira's laugh was bitter. What gave it away? The fact that you stole me from my wedding? Or that you threatened to murder my family if I didn't comply? I stated facts. Theron corrected. Moon oath breaking carries a death penalty. That's law, not threat. And that makes it better? It makes it truth. He paused. Would you have preferred I let you consummate a false bond? Let you live a lie while your parents faced no consequences for their betrayal? Mira turned to stare out the window. I would have preferred you stayed dead, as we were told. The silence that followed was so heavy she almost regretted the words. Almost. I nearly was, Theron said quietly. 3 times in the Northern Wars. I came close enough to death to taste it. Each time, the only thing that pulled me back was the knowledge that a silver-marked girl was waiting. That I'd made a promise. Despite herself, Mira looked at him. There was something raw in his voice, something that didn't match the cold king who'd crashed her wedding. I didn't know I was waiting, she said softly. I didn't know you existed. I know. His jaw tightened. And that's a betrayal I'll never forgive your parents for. They stole years from us. Years we should have had to know each other, to prepare for this bond. His eyes met hers. But I won't let them steal anymore. The Bloodmoon castle appeared on the 3rd evening, rising from a valley shrouded in perpetual mist. It was massive, not the gleaming white marble of the stories, but dark stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Towers stretched toward a sky that looked perpetually caught between dusk and full night. It's called the Veil, Theron said, noting her expression. The mist that's been here for 5 years, since. He stopped. Since I returned from war. The carriage rolled through gates that groaned like living things. Inside, the castle was even more oppressive. Profferens. Torches lined corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. Servants moved like ghosts, bowing low as Theron passed, their eyes never rising to meet his. This way, Theron said, guiding her up a spiral staircase. Your chambers are in the east wing. My chambers? Mira repeated. Not ours? Something flickered across his face. We're bound by moon oath, but not yet mated. You'll have your own space until... He trailed off. Until you're ready. He stopped at a heavy oak door and pushed it open. The room beyond was enormous, easily 3 times the size of her childhood bedroom. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in silver and midnight blue. Bookshelves lined one wall. A writing desk sat by a window overlooking the misty valley, and a fire crackled in an ornate fireplace. It's beautiful, Mira admitted despite herself. It was my mother's, Theron said. Before she died, I thought. He seemed to struggle with the words. I thought you might like it. A woman appeared in the doorway, elderly, with iron gray hair and sharp amber eyes. Your Majesty, the girl's things have been unpacked. Thank you, Moira. Theron gestured to the woman. She'll attend to your needs. Anything you require, ask her. Moira's expression was carefully neutral, but Mira caught the slight curl of her lip. Great. Even the servants judged her. Dinner is at sunset, Theron continued. Moira will bring you down. I'm not hungry. You'll eat anyway. It wasn't a request. You've had 3 days to sulk. Starting tomorrow, you'll begin learning what it means to be a Bloodmoon queen. I never agreed to be queen, Mira said, her temper flaring. I agreed to come here, that's all. Theron moved closer, and Mira's breath caught. Powers. This close, she could see flecks of amber in his golden eyes. could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "You were born to be queen," he said softly. "The mark proves it. The moon goddess chose you for this, chose us for each other. You can fight it, hate me for it, rage against it all you want." His hand lifted, stopping just short of touching her face. "But it doesn't change what you are, what we are." "And what's that?" "Bound," he said simply, "in ways that go deeper than ceremony or choice. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." He left before she could respond, the door closing with quiet finality behind him. Mira sank onto the bed, her legs suddenly unable to support her. The mark on her spine tingled, a constant reminder of the bond she'd never asked for, never wanted. Moira remained in the doorway, watching her with those sharp amber eyes. "You should rest before dinner, girl. You look half dead." "I'm not," Mira started, then stopped. What was the point? Why does he want me here? Really? It can't just be about some oath made before I was born. Moira's expression shifted, something almost like pity crossing her features. "That's not for me to say. But you know. I know many things I don't speak of." Moira moved to the wardrobe, pulling out a dress of deep burgundy. "You'll wear this to dinner. It's appropriate for a first formal meal." "I don't care what's appropriate." "Then you'll learn." Moira's voice was sharp. "The Bloodmoon Court is not your village pack. Power plays happen at every meal, every interaction. You wear what signals strength, or you'll be eaten alive." Despite her anger, curiosity stirred. What happened here? Everyone acts like they're walking on knives. Moira was quiet for so long, Mira thought she wouldn't answer. Then, 5 years ago, the king returned from war, changed. The veil appeared the night he came back. Since then, this castle has been a tomb pretending to be a palace. Changed how? "That," Moira said, laying the dress across the bed, "you'll have to discover yourself. Dinner is in 2 hours. I suggest you use the bath and make yourself presentable. The court will be watching." She paused at the door. "And girl? Whatever you think you know about being a she-wolf, being a mate, forget it. Nothing here works the way you expect." The door closed, leaving Mira alone with her thoughts and the distant sound of something howling in the mist outside her window. The dress fit perfectly, which somehow made Mira even angrier. Of course, Theron would know her exact measurements. Of course, he'd have an entire wardrobe ready for her, as if her arrival had always been inevitable. Moira returned precisely 2 hours later, her sharp eyes assessing Mira with what might have been approval. "Better. Your hair needs work." "My hair is fine." Quote, "Your hair looks like you've been dragged through a hedge." Moira produced pins from seemingly nowhere and began working. "In this court, appearance is armor. Remember that." "Why do you keep warning me?" Mira asked, studying the woman's reflection in the mirror. "I'm nobody to you." "You're the king's intended mate," Moira said, her hands deft as she arranged Mira's dark hair into something elegant. "Which means you're either going to save this place or destroy what's left of it. Either way, I'd prefer you survive long enough for us to find out which." Before Mira could respond, Moira stepped back. "There. Now you look like someone who belongs here." The woman in the mirror was a stranger. The burgundy dress hugged her curves before flowing like wine to the floor. Her hair was swept up, exposing the graceful line of her neck. She looked regal. She looked like someone who could be a queen. The thought terrified her. Moira led her through a maze of corridors, each one more oppressive than the last. They passed servants who pressed themselves against walls, eyes downcast. Past guards who stood like statues, their hands never far from their weapons. "How many people live here?" Mira asked, her voice echoing off stone walls. In the castle proper, 200, give or take. In the territory, thousands. Moira's pace never slowed. The Bloodmoon pack is the largest in the 7 territories, also the most feared. Because of Theron? Because of what he became in the war. Moira stopped at a set of massive double doors carved with wolves mid-hunt. Remember strength always. Show fear and they'll tear you apart. The doors swung open. The dining hall beyond was cavernous, lit by hundreds of candles that did little to dispel the shadows clinging to the vaulted ceiling. A long table dominated the center, already filled with wolves in various states of finery. All conversation died as Mira entered. Theron sat at the head of the table, still wearing black, but with silver embroidery catching the candlelight. His eyes found hers immediately, and something in her chest tightened at the intensity of his gaze. "Lady Mira," he said, his voice carrying through the sudden silence. "Please, join us." The seat to his right was empty, the queen's seat. Of course. Mira forced herself to walk steadily, feeling dozens of eyes tracking her movement. She'd never been the center of attention like this, had spent her whole life trying to be invisible. Now invisibility was impossible. Callum sat to Theron's left, his ice-blue eyes assessing her coolly. Senna was further down, along with other wolves Mira didn't recognize. All of them powerful, all of them watching her like predators deciding if she was threat or prey. Theron stood as she approached, a gesture of respect that seemed to surprise several of the assembled wolves. He pulled out her chair himself. "Thank you," Mira murmured, because refusing the courtesy would only make things worse. As she sat, the mark on her spine flared with warmth. This close to Theron, she could feel something pulling between them, like a rope drawn taut. The moon oath, recognizing its mate, quote, "My court," Theron said, his hand resting briefly on the back of her chair. "This is Lady Mira Silverbane, bearer of the Queen's mark. She is under my protection, bound by moon oath, and will be treated with the respect due to her station." His eyes swept the table, golden and dangerous. "Anyone who forgets this will answer to me personally." "Your Majesty," a woman halfway down the table spoke, her voice honey-sweet and poisonous. She was beautiful, dark hair, green eyes, curves displayed in a dress cut daringly low. "Forgive my curiosity, but isn't the lady already mated?" "I heard she was taken from her very wedding." Mira's hands clenched in her lap. Beside her, Theron went very still. "A false bond." "Lady Valina," he said, his voice mild but with an edge that could cut. "Formed in ignorance of the moon oath. The moon goddess herself voided it, pardoned." "How convenient," Valina purred, "that the goddess's will aligns so perfectly with your desires." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Several wolves shifted nervously. "Are you questioning my claim?" Theron asked quietly. Valina smiled, showing too many teeth. "Of course not, Your Majesty. I merely wonder if Lady Mira understands the complexities of her new position." "Perhaps you should enlighten me," Mira heard herself say. Every instinct screamed to stay quiet, stay small. But Moira's words echoed in her mind. "Show fear and they'll tear you apart." Valina's eyes gleamed with malicious delight. "Well, being a queen requires certain capabilities, power, the ability to bond fully with one's mate, for instance, to share thoughts, emotions, to be truly united." She tilted her head. "I heard your bond is defective, that you're mute in the pack mind. Possibly. How can you possibly be a proper mate, let alone a queen, if you can't even complete a basic bond?" The words hit like physical blows. Heat flooded Mira's face as shocked murmurs rippled through the assembly. Of course, They'd found out. Of course, her greatest shame would be common knowledge. That's enough. Theron's voice cracked like a whip. Lady Valena, you will apologize to your future queen. Now. I merely speak truth. You speak poison dressed as concern. Theron's eyes had gone completely gold, his wolf rising to the surface. Apologize or leave my court permanently. The room held its breath. Valena's beautiful face twisted with fury, but she dipped her head. My apologies, Lady Mira. I spoke out of turn. It was the least sincere apology Mira had ever heard, but Theron seemed satisfied. He turned his attention back to the table. The bond between myself and Lady Mira is sacred, ordained by the moon goddess herself. Its nature is not up for discussion or debate. Is that clear? That is for Sother. A chorus of, yes, your majesty followed. Servants began bringing food, roasted meats, fresh bread, vegetables prepared in ways Mira had never seen. Her stomach growled despite her emotional turmoil. She hadn't eaten in days. Eat, Theron said quietly, meant only for her. You'll need your strength. For what? For surviving them. He gestured subtly to the assembled court. Valena isn't the only one who'll test you, powers. They need to know if you're weak. And if I am? His eyes met hers, and for a moment, she saw past the cold king to something more complicated underneath. Then I'll protect you until you learn to be strong. Throughout the meal, Mira felt the weight of watching eyes. Conversations swirled around her politics, territory disputes, trade agreements. She understood perhaps a third of what was discussed. The Bloodmoon Pack's reach was far more extensive than she'd realized. The Shadowfen Alpha is refusing the new terms, Callum reported. He says the tribute is too high. Then he can explain that to me personally, Theron said. Arrange a meeting. He may not come willingly. I don't care if he comes willingly or in chains. He comes. The casual menace in Theron's voice sent chills down Mira's spine. This was the king who'd ended the Northern Wars, who was feared across all 7 territories. Not the man who'd offered her the queen's chambers or pulled out her chair. How many versions of him existed behind those golden eyes? As dessert was served, something with berries and cream, a commotion at the door drew everyone's attention. A guard entered, bowing low. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. There's been an incident at the northern border. Theron's expression didn't change, but Mira felt the tension radiating from him. What kind of incident? Rogues, Your Majesty. A pack of them. They've killed 3 of our patrol wolves. The room erupted in angry snarls. Theron held up a hand for silence. How many? At least a dozen, possibly more. They're organized, Your Majesty. Led by someone who knows our patrol patterns. Impossible, Senna interjected. Our patterns are classified, nevertheless. The guard kept his eyes down. They knew exactly where to strike. Theron stood, and the assembly immediately quieted. Callum, Senna, gather a hunting party. We leave within the hour. Your Majesty, Callum said carefully. Perhaps it would be wiser to send others. You've only just returned with crescent. I'm aware of what I've just returned with. Theron cut him off. His eyes found Mira's. Which is precisely why I need to make it clear what happens to those who threaten what's mine. He turned to leave, then paused. Lady Valena, you'll see to Lady Mira's comfort in my absence. Valena's smile was sharp as broken glass. It would be my honor, Your Majesty. Theron crossed to Mira, and before she could react, his hand cupped her face with surprising gentleness. Stay in your chambers. Trust no one. I'll return by dawn. What if you don't? Something flickered in his eyes, surprise. Maybe that she cared. Then Callum will see you safely back to your pack. Moonoath voided, Your family's debt forgiven. That's not what I asked. A corner of his mouth quirked up. Then have faith, my silver wolf. I didn't survive 5 years of war to fall to rogues at my own border. He was gone before she could respond, Callum and Senna following in his wake. The remaining court slowly filed out, leaving Mira alone with Moira and Lady Valina. Well, Valina purred, circling Mira like a predator. Isn't this cozy? Just us girls. Her smile was all teeth. I think it's time you and I had a proper chat about your place here, don't you? Moira stepped closer to Mira, and for the first time, Mira was grateful for the stern woman's presence. It was going to be a very long night. Valena led them not to Mira's chambers, but to a sitting room decorated in deep greens and gold. Plush chairs surrounded a fireplace where flames danced hypnotically. Several other she-wolves were already there, their conversations dying as Mira entered. Ladies, Valena announced, settling gracefully into the largest chair, our new future queen. The way she said future queen made it sound like an insult. Mira remained standing. Moira, a silent presence behind her. I should return to my chambers. His Majesty said. His Majesty isn't here, Valena interrupted. And we're simply being welcoming. Sit, please. It wasn't a request. Mira sat in the chair furthest from Valena, her spine straight, hands folded in her lap. The other she-wolves watched her with varying degrees of curiosity and hostility. Wine, Valena offered, pouring a deep red liquid into delicate glasses. It's from the king's personal reserve. He won't mind. Mira accepted the glass but didn't drink. She'd learned wariness from her mother. Never consume anything you hadn't seen poured. So, Valena began, swirling her own wine. Tell us about yourself, Lady Mira. You're from the Silver Paw Pack, yes? Such a quaint little territory. It's home, Mira said simply. And your wolf? She must be quite remarkable for the king to steal you from your wedding. Valena's eyes glittered. Do show us. I'd rather not. Oh, but we insist. Valena leaned forward. After all, if you're to be our queen, we should know the wolf we're bowing to. The other she-wolves murmured agreement. Mira felt the trap closing but couldn't see a way out. Refusing would make her look weak. Shifting would expose her defect. My wolf is private, she said carefully. How curious. Valena's smile widened. Most wolves are proud of their beasts. Unless, of course, there's something to hide. Leave her alone, Valena, one of the other women said, a blonde with kind eyes. She's clearly exhausted. I'm simply curious, Helena. Surely that's allowed? Mira set down her untouched wine and stood. Thank you for your hospitality, but I'm tired. Moira, if you'll show me back. Running away? Valena purred. How very unqueenly. I'm not running. I'm choosing not to play whatever game this is. Game? Valena's expression hardened. This isn't a game, little silver wolf. This is survival. The Bloodmoon court is filled with predators, and you've just been dropped among us, smelling of fear and defect. Mira's hands clenched at her sides. What do you want from me? The truth. Valena stood, her beauty suddenly sharp and dangerous. What did you do to make the king obsess over you? What spell? What trick? There was no trick. I didn't even know he existed until 3 days ago. Liar. Valena moved closer. Theron hasn't looked at a woman in 5 years. He's refused every potential mate, driven away every she-wolf who tried to catch his interest. Then, suddenly he crashes your wedding and claims you're his destined mate? She laughed bitterly. No one's that lucky. Understanding dawned. You wanted him. I was promised him. Valena hissed. Before he left for the war, before he became Whatever he is now, we had an understanding. An understanding isn't a moon oath. And a mark isn't a guarantee of happiness. Valina's eyes blazed. You think that crescent on your spine makes you special? Makes you worthy? You're a defective she-wolf with a broken bond. The only reason you're here is because the king is too honorable to break an oath made by his dead mother. The words struck deep, finding all of Mira's insecurities and twisting. That's enough, Moira interjected sharply. Lady Mira is under the king's protection. Speaking to her this way is simply telling her what everyone else is thinking, Valina finished. She turned back to Mira. You want advice? Here it is. When Theron realizes what he's actually bound himself to, when the novelty of the moon oath wears off, he'll set you aside. Oh, he'll keep you comfortable, he's too honorable not to, but you'll be a queen in name only. She smiled coldly. So enjoy your pretty chambers and your fancy dresses while you can. Because once he understands what a mistake his mother made, marking you, you'll spend the rest of your life in a gilded cage, watching him take lovers who can actually satisfy him. Mira's throat closed. Every fear she'd harbored since discovering the mark crystallized in Valina's words. You're dismissed, Lady Valina, Moira said coldly. All of you. How dare you? The king left Lady Mira in my care. Moira cut her off. Which means I speak with his authority in matters concerning her safety and comfort. And right now, your presence is neither safe nor comfortable. Leave. For a moment, Valina looked ready to argue. Then she swept from the room, the other she-wolves following like a flock of colorful birds. Only Helena remained, approaching Mira hesitantly. Don't listen to her. Valina's bitter because she stopped herself. Just don't listen. The king brought you here for a reason. Because of an oath, Mira whispered. Not because he wants me. Helena's expression was pitying. Maybe, but I've seen how he looks at you. She touched Mira's arm briefly. Give it time. After she left, Moira guided Mira back through the silent corridors. Neither spoke until they reached the queen's chambers. Is she right? Mira finally asked. Am I just an obligation he's stuck with? Moira sighed, suddenly looking every one of her years. I don't know what you are to him, child. But I know what he's become these past 5 years, and I know that look in his eyes when he watches you. She paused. That's not obligation. That's hunger. Whether that's good or bad for you, only time will tell. Alone in the vast chambers, Mira moved to the window overlooking the misty valley. Somewhere out there, Theron was hunting rogues. Would he return? And if he did, would Valina's predictions come true? The mark on her spine pulsed steadily, a heartbeat that wasn't hers, the bond calling to its mate. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and waited for dawn. Theron returned just before sunrise, the mist parting for him like a living thing. Mira had stayed awake all night, unable to sleep despite Moira's urgings. She'd watched the valley from her window, jumping at every sound, every shadow. When movement finally appeared at the tree line, her heart leapt. The hunting party emerged slowly, Callum supporting Senna, whose arm hung at an odd angle. Other wolves limped or carried wounded companions. And at their center, Theron walked alone, covered in blood that couldn't all be his. Mira was running before she realized she'd moved, ignoring Moira's startled protests. She flew down corridors, took stairs 2 at a time, burst through a side entrance just as the hunting party reached the courtyard. Theron's head snapped up, his golden eyes finding her immediately. They were still more wolf than man, glowing faintly in the pre-dawn light. You're hurt, Mira gasped, taking in the gashes across his chest, the blood matting his hair. Superficial, he said, his voice rough. You should be in your chambers. You're bleeding. I've bled before. But he swayed slightly, and Callum was suddenly there, steadying him. "Your Majesty, the healer." "I'm fine," Theron growled. Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed. Mira screamed, catching his shoulders, though his weight nearly pulled her down. "Help him!" The next hour was chaos. Healers swarmed Theron's chambers, not the Queen's rooms, but his own, on the opposite side of the castle. They cut away his blood-soaked clothes, revealing deep claw marks across his ribs, a bite wound on his shoulder that looked infected. "Silver," the head healer muttered. "They used silver weapons. Your Majesty, this is serious." "Just fix it," Callum ordered. Mira stood pressed against the wall, watching healers work with practiced efficiency. She should leave. She had no right to be here, in the king's private chambers, watching him vulnerable and wounded, but she couldn't make herself move. "Lady Mira." Callum appeared beside her, his ice-blue eyes assessing. "You should rest. This will take time." "What happened?" "The rogues were waiting for us." His jaw tightened. It was a trap. They wanted the king specifically. "Why?" "Because killing him would throw the 7 territories into chaos. Because there are those who want the old ways back, unchecked violence. Might makes right. No unified law." Callum glanced at Theron's still form. "He's made enemies by bringing peace." Quote, "Peace through fear, you mean?" Mira said quietly. "Sometimes that's the only kind that lasts." Callum studied her. "Why did you come running? You barely know him. For all intents and purposes, he's your captor." Mira didn't have an answer. Or rather, she had several answers and didn't like any of them. "The bond," she finally said, purred. "The mark must have power. The mark doesn't work that way. It's not a compulsion." Callum's expression was unreadable. "You chose to run to him." Before Mira could respond, Theron groaned. His eyes opened, still more gold than human, finding her across the room with unerring accuracy. "You came," he rasped. "You collapsed." "Dramatic of me." He tried to sit up, and 3 healers immediately pushed him back down. "Your Majesty, please." "Everyone out," Theron ordered. When no one moved, his voice dropped to a growl that raised the hair on Mira's arms. "Out. Now." The healers fled. Callum hesitated, then bowed and left, closing the door behind him. Suddenly, Mira was alone with a wounded, half-dressed king, whose eyes tracked her every movement like prey. "You should be resting," she said, not moving from her spot against the wall. "So should you." "Moira said you stayed awake all night." "I couldn't sleep." "Why?" "Because I was terrified you wouldn't come back. Because the thought of you dying made something in my chest crack. Because even though I hate you for stealing me, for disrupting my life, I can't stop feeling connected to you in ways that terrify me." "The bed is unfamiliar," she said instead. Theron's laugh was dark. "Liar. How would you know?" "Because I can feel it." He pressed a hand to his chest, over his heart. "Right here. Your fear? Your worry? It's been there since the moment I collapsed, thrumming through the bond like a second heartbeat." Mira's breath caught. "That's impossible. The bond doesn't work for me. I'm defective." "You're not defective." Theron pushed himself up despite his injuries, his eyes blazing. "Whoever told you that was a fool. Your bond isn't broken, it's selective." "What does that mean?" "It means you don't connect with everyone, can't be forced into the pack mind like other wolves is powered. But the right bond, the right mate." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "Can you feel me, Mira? Right now? Can you feel what I'm feeling?" She wanted to say no. Wanted to deny the strange warmth blooming in her chest, the sensation of relief and pain, and something fierce and protective that wasn't hers. "I don't know," she whispered. "Liar," he said again, but gently this time. "Come here, Prydes. You're injured. I'm healing. It's what we do." He held out his hand. "Please." Against every instinct for self-preservation, Mira crossed the room. She took his hand, and the moment their skin touched, the bond flared to life like a struck match. Emotions crashed over her, his emotions. Pain from his wounds, yes, but underneath that, relief that she was safe. Wonder that she'd come running to him. Fear that he'd frightened her. And beneath it all, a bone-deep loneliness that made her throat tighten. "You feel it," Theron said, wonder in his voice. "You actually feel it. How is this possible? I've never been able to bond before." "Because they weren't your mate." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "The moon oath isn't just ceremony, Mira. It's magic older than the pacts, older than the territories. When my mother marked you, she bound our souls together. You were always meant for me." "I had a life," Mira said, but the words lacked heat. "I was going to marry Gareth, have a simple life." "You would have been miserable." Theron's eyes held hers. "Be honest. When that bond formed with Gareth, what did you feel?" Nothing. She'd felt nothing, just the thin thread of connection required by ceremony, empty and cold. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "You can't just appear in my life, claim I'm yours, and expect me to— To what? Feel something?" He pulled her closer, his other hand coming up to cup her face. "I'm not asking you to love me, Mira. I'm not even asking you to want this bond. I'm just asking you to stop pretending you feel nothing." "And what do you feel?" she challenged. "Obligation? Duty to an oath your mother made?" "I feel like I've been searching for something my entire life and finally found it." His voice was raw. "I feel like every wound I took in the war, every nightmare, every moment of darkness was worth it because it led me back to you." His forehead touched hers. "And it terrifies me, because the one person who can complete me is the one person who has every reason to hate me." Mira's eyes burned. "I don't hate you." "You should." "Well, I'm defective, remember? I don't do what I should." Theron's laugh was surprised and genuine. "No, you certainly don't." They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing each other's air, the bond humming between them. Then Theron's eyes closed, exhaustion and blood loss finally catching up. "You need to rest," Mira said softly. "Stay." His hand tightened on hers. "Please, just until I fall asleep." She should leave. Should put distance between them, protect herself from feelings that were growing too fast, too intense. Instead, she settled on the edge of his bed, their hands still linked. "Tell me a story," Theron murmured, his eyes already closing. "Your voice, it helps." So Mira did. She told him about a wolf who got lost in a storm and a girl who guided him home. She told him about courage and kindness and finding unexpected things in unlikely places. She told him stories until his breathing evened out, until the tension left his body, until she was certain he was deeply asleep. Then, because no one was watching, and she could pretend it meant nothing, she brushed his dark hair back from his forehead and whispered, "Come back to me safely next time." The mark on her spine flared with warmth, and in his sleep, Theron smiled. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange new rhythm. Theron healed with supernatural speed, though he still carried a scar on his ribs, a rare thing for a wolf of his power. Mira spent her days learning to navigate the treacherous waters of Bloodmoon Court and her evenings with Theron. They'd established an unspoken routine. After the formal dinners where they had to play their roles, intimidating king and uncertain mate, he would come to her chambers. They would sit by the fire, and she would read to him or tell him stories while he did paperwork or simply listened. "Tell me about your childhood," Theron said one evening, his head resting against the back of his chair, eyes closed. "It wasn't interesting," Mira said, setting down her book. "Everything about you interests me." Heat crept up her neck. 3 weeks. And she still wasn't used to the way he looked at her, spoke to her, as if she were something precious. "I was lonely," she admitted. "Other children didn't want to play with the defective wolf." Possible. "My parents tried to hide their disappointment, but I felt it anyway. My sister Kaya was everything. I wasn't strong wolf, easy bond, beautiful. I spent most of my time reading." "Books from your father's collection?" No, he refused to waste money on them. "But there was an old woman in the village, Grandmother Iris. She let me borrow from her library." Mira smiled at the memory. "She'd been a scholar before her mate died. She taught me to love stories." "Is she still alive?" Mira's smile faded. "She died 2 years ago. Left me her collection, but my father sold most of it." Theron's eyes opened, something dark flickering through them. "He sold your inheritance?" "I was living in his house, eating his food after my mate rejected me. He said it was payment for my upkeep." "He's a fool." Theron sat forward. "And a cruel one. You deserved better." "I'm used to it." "You shouldn't have to be." He stood, moving to the bookshelf. "That's why I gave you these. No one will take them from you here. This room, these books, they're yours. Not mine, not the crown's. Yours." Something in Mira's chest cracked open. "Why are you so kind to me?" "Because someone should have been all along." He returned to his chair, studying her. "Tell me something else. Something you've never told anyone." Mira hesitated, then said, "I used to pretend I had a different life. A family that wanted me. A mate who loved me. I'd create entire stories in my head about who I could be if I weren't broken." "You're not broken." "I can't bond normally." "You bond with me." His eyes held hers. "Perfectly. Completely. The problem was never you, Mira. It was that you hadn't found your match." "And you think you're my match? A king who stole me from my wedding?" "I think the moon goddess thought so when she marked you." He paused. "But I'm asking you to consider it. Not because of destiny or magic or obligation, but because in 3 weeks, you've become the best part of my day. Because I find myself counting the hours until I can be alone with you. Because when you smile, really smile, not that polite mask you wear for the court, it feels like the sun breaking through the veil." Mira's heart hammered. "Theron, I'm not asking for an answer," he said quickly. "I'm just telling you the truth. You asked why I'm kind to you. It's because being near you makes me feel human again after 5 years of being a monster." "You're not a monster. You haven't seen what I did in the war. What I'm capable of." His expression darkened. "The things I've done to protect this kingdom, to end the fighting, they haunt me. Every night, I dream of blood and screaming. But when you're here, telling your stories, the nightmares stay away." Understanding dawned. "That's why you come here. To my chambers instead of asking me to yours. You need the stories." "I need you," he corrected softly. "The stories are just an excuse to be near you without pushing for more than you're ready to give." Mira stood, moving to where he Saturday. She touched his face, feeling the bond pulse between them. "What if I'm ready to give more?" Ha! His eyes darkened. "Don't offer unless you're certain." "I'm not certain of anything," she admitted. "But I know that I think about you constantly. That I worry when you're gone and feel relief when you return. That these evenings with you are the only time I feel like myself." She swallowed hard. "Is that enough?" It's everything. Theron stood, his hands settling on her waist. But I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. If we complete the mate bond, you'll be bound to me forever. You'll be queen, with all the danger and politics and pressure that entails. And the court. He hesitated. They'll never accept you easily. You'll face challenges I can't always protect you from. I know. And when the nightmares come, when the darkness I carry tries to drown me, you'll see sides of me that might frighten you. I'm not fragile. No, he agreed, something like pride in his voice. You're not. Then he kissed her. It started gentle, almost tentative, as if he expected her to pull away. But Mira leaned in, her hands sliding up to his shoulders. The bond between them ignited, emotions flooding back and forth, his desire and wonder, her nervousness and growing heat. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theron rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight. Not here, in my chambers. Let me show you what it means to be truly bonded. Mira's pulse raced. I'm afraid. So am I. He pulled back to look at her. But I've been afraid for 5 years. I'm tired of letting fear rule me. She took his hand, feeling the calluses, the strength, the slight tremor that said he was just as nervous as she was. Show me then. Show me what we could be. The walk to his chambers felt both endless and too fast. Once inside, Theron was careful, gentle, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. But Mira didn't want to change her mind. When they finally came together, the mate bond completed with a flash of silver light. And for the first time in her life, Mira felt whole, not because a man completed her, but because she'd finally found someone who saw her brokenness and called it beautiful. Later, wrapped in silk sheets with Theron's arms around her, Mira whispered, "Did you really know you wanted me from the first moment?" "I knew I needed you," he corrected. The wanting came later, around the second day, when you argued with me about the bond, and looked like you wanted to stab me with your dinner knife. Mira laughed. I did want to stab you. I know. It was adorable. She elbowed him, and he caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Sleep, my silver wolf. Tomorrow, we announce the completed bond to the court. Will they accept it? They'll have no choice. His arms tightened. You're mine now, completely, and I protect what's mine. Mira closed her eyes, feeling safer than she ever had. The nightmares, the politics, the challenges they would come. But for now, wrapped in the arms of a king who'd stolen her from one life and given her another, she was content. The mark on her spine pulsed in time with Theron's heartbeat, and Mira finally understood what it meant to be chosen. The announcement of the completed mate bond sent shockwaves through the Bloodmoon court. Mira woke the next morning to find her belongings being moved to the king's chambers, and servants bowing lower when they passed. Is it always like this? She asked Moira, who was supervising the transfer with military precision. Quote, You're queen now, girl. Yes, it's always like this. Moira paused. Though I'll warn you, completing the bond will make some people very unhappy. Valina, among others. Moira gave her a sharp look. You'll need to establish your authority quickly. The court respects strength. Show any weakness, and they'll tear you apart. But Mira barely had time to worry about court politics. That afternoon, a messenger arrived from the Shadowfen territory. The Alpha who'd been refusing Theron's terms had been found dead, apparently killed by his own son in a challenge for leadership. Convenient timing, Callum observed at the emergency council meeting. Mira sat at Theron's right hand now, learning to navigate the complex politics of ruling 7 territories. Too convenient, Theron agreed. The son, what's his name? Dax Shadowfen. Senna provided. She'd recovered from her injuries, though her arm was still in a sling, young, ambitious, and known for his radical views. What kind of views? Mira asked. Everyone turned to look at her. She fought the urge to shrink back. He believes in the old ways, Callum explained. Pack law over kingdom law. Might makes right. He's been vocal about his opposition to the king's unified rule. So, by killing his father and taking control, he's essentially declaring rebellion, Mira said. Theron's hand found hers under the table, a brief squeeze of approval. Exactly. The question is whether this is isolated or the start of something larger. Over the next week, 3 more alphas died in accidents or challenges, all of them loyalists to Theron's rule. Their replacements were all young wolves, with ties to traditionalist factions. It's coordinated, Theron said one night, staring at maps spread across his desk. Someone's orchestrating this, picking off my supporters and replacing them with opposition. But who has that much influence? Mira asked, studying the maps. She'd been learning the territories, memorizing pack names and alliances. That's what I need to find out. He rubbed his eyes tiredly. I should call a gathering, bring all the territorial alphas here, force them to show their hands. Thank you for watching and will be a plan. That's dangerous, Callum warned. If there's truly a conspiracy, bringing them all here gives them access to you. It also gives me access to them. Theron's eyes were hard. Send the summons. Full moon, 3 weeks from now. All territorial alphas are required to attend. The preparations for the gathering consumed the castle. Hundreds of wolves would be arriving, alphas and their entourages, all of them needing housing, feeding, and careful watching. Mira found herself swept into the planning, working alongside Moira and the seneschal to arrange everything. It was exhausting but also oddly satisfying. For the first time, she felt useful, needed for more than just her womb. You're good at this, Theron observed one evening, watching her coordinate sleeping arrangements for 3 rival packs. It's like solving a puzzle, Mira said, moving pieces on the chart. Put enemies too close and they'll fight, too far and they'll feel insulted. But if you balance it just right, they'll be too focused on politics to plot. Theron pulled her into his arms. You're going to be a remarkable queen. I'm just organizing rooms. You're navigating complex social dynamics while maintaining order. That's statecraft. He kissed her temple. And you're doing it better than most wolves who've been trained for this their whole lives. The praise warmed her, but worry still gnawed at her stomach. Theron, what if this gathering is a trap? What if they're planning something? Panic. Then we'll be ready. His arms tightened around her. I won't let anything happen to you. I'm not worried about me. He pulled back to look at her. Mira, you're the target, Theron. These attacks, the dead alphas, the timing, it's all aimed at destabilizing your rule. Bringing everyone here puts you in danger. I've survived worse. That's not reassuring. He cupped her face. Listen to me. I've spent 5 years building this kingdom, creating laws that protect the weak, unifying packs that have hated each other for generations. I won't abandon that because of threats. If someone wants my throne, let them try to take it. That's what I'm afraid of, Mira whispered. The night before the gathering, Mira couldn't sleep. She stood at the window, watching torchlights bob through the veil as early arrivals made their way to the castle. Come back to bed, Theron murmured from behind her. I have a bad feeling about tomorrow. He wrapped his arms around her, his chin resting on her shoulder. So do I. But we face it together. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I fail you? Impossible. He turned her to face him. You're the strongest person I know. You survived being unwanted, unloved, cast aside, and you didn't let it break you. You kept your kindness, your compassion, your ability to see good in people. That takes more strength than any warrior I've commanded. Theron, whatever comes tomorrow, we'll handle it, you and me, together. He kissed her softly. Now come to bed. You'll need your rest. But sleep was elusive. In the darkness, Mira's wolf stirred uneasily, sensing danger on the wind. And when she finally dozed off, she dreamed of blood and silver weapons, and golden eyes going dark. She woke with Theron's arms around her and the certain knowledge that everything was about to change. The gathering began at noon the next day. Alphas from all 7 territories arrived with their entourages, filling the great hall with power and tension. Mira stood at Theron's side in a gown of midnight blue and silver, the queen's crown heavy on her head. "The Bloodmoon Alpha," the herald announced. "King Theron Bloodmoon and his mate, Queen Mira Bloodmoon." The assembled wolves bowed, some deeply, others barely inclining their heads. Mira catalogued them all, noting who showed respect and who radiated hostility. Dax. Shadowfen stood near the front, young and handsome with a cruel mouth. When his eyes met Mira's, she saw calculation and contempt. "Thank you all for coming," Theron began, his voice carrying through the hall. "I've called this gathering to address the recent instability in our territories." Instability? You mean the fact that strong alphas are finally reclaiming their packs from those who would weaken us with your laws? Dax called out. Murmurs of agreement rippled through certain sections of the crowd. "I mean," Theron said, his voice dangerous and low, "that loyal alphas have been murdered and replaced by wolves who put their own ambition above the good of the kingdom." "The kingdom?" Dax sneered. "There is no kingdom, there are packs, territories. The strong rule and the weak serve. That's the way of wolves." "That's the way of chaos," Theron corrected. "I've seen where that path leads. I spent 5 years in the Northern Wars watching wolves tear each other apart over scraps of land. I came back to build something better." "You came back broken," Dax said. "Everyone knows it. 5 years in the Vale, refusing to see anyone, barely ruling. Then suddenly you emerge, steal someone else's mate, and expect us all to bow?" He laughed. "You're not a king. You're a monster pretending at civilization." The hall erupted. Loyalists shouted at Dax. His supporters shouted back. Mira felt Theron tense beside her, felt the bond thrumming with his barely controlled rage. Then Velena's voice cut through the chaos. "Perhaps we should ask the queen what she thinks. After all, she's uniquely positioned to judge whether our king is monster or man." All eyes turned to Mira. Her heart hammered, but she lifted her chin. "I think," she said clearly, "that anyone who confuses strength with cruelty has never truly known power." Silence fell. "True strength," Mira continued, "lies in choosing compassion when vengeance would be easier, in building when destruction is simpler, in protecting the weak rather than exploiting them." She looked directly at Dax. "My mate is the strongest wolf I've ever known. Not because he can kill any fool, can kill, but because he chooses not to unless absolutely necessary." Dax's face darkened. Pretty words from a defective wolf who got lucky with a king's mark. "Careful," Theron growled. "Or what? You'll kill me in front of everyone? Prove you're exactly what I say you are?" Dax spread his arms. "Go ahead, show them the monster." "Enough," Callum interjected. "This gathering is supposed to—" The explosion came from the east wing. The castle shook. Screams erupted, and through the shattered windows, Mira saw flames rising into the twilight sky. "It started," someone shouted. And then the real chaos began. Theron shifted instantly, his massive wolf form filling the space where he'd stood. Callum and Senna did the same, moving to flank him as confusion erupted throughout the great hall. Wolves shifted, claws extended, some moving to defend, others clearly preparing to attack. Mira stood frozen for a heartbeat, her mind racing. The explosion came from the east wing where the loyalist alphas were housed. This wasn't random. It was targeted. Guards. Callum's voice boomed. Protect the king and queen. Everyone else stay. Another explosion, this time from the south tower. More screams. Through the windows, Mira could see figures moving through the veil, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. We're under attack, Senna snarled, her wolf form bristling. It's an invasion. Dax's laugh was cold. No, this is a reckoning. Your time is over, Bloodmoon. Theron lunged, but 3 of Dax's wolves intercepted him. The great hall descended into chaos as loyalists and rebels clashed. Mira stumbled backward, searching desperately for a weapon, for anything. A hand grabbed her arm, Velena, her face triumphant. Come with me, little queen, you're the perfect bargaining chip. Let go of me. Mira tried to shift, but Velena was stronger, dragging her toward a side door. Point. Then Moira was there, a blade flashing in her hand. Release her. It's power. You're just a servant. Velena sneered. Stay out of this. I'm the queen's protector, Moira corrected. And you're a traitor. The fight was brief and brutal. Moira moved with surprising speed, her blade finding Velena's shoulder. The she-wolf shrieked and released Mira, stumbling back. Go, Moira ordered. Find somewhere safe. I can't just... You're the queen. If you die, everything falls apart. Go. Mira ran, her heart pounding. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of battle snarls, screams, the crash of furniture being destroyed. The castle was a war zone. She ducked into a side corridor, trying to remember the layout. There, the library. It had only one entrance, easy to defend. She could barricade herself there until a massive wolf stepped out of the shadows, blocking her path. Not one of Theron's guards. This wolf's eyes were cold, calculating. Mira backed up slowly, her wolf rising to the surface. She'd never been a fighter, but she wouldn't go down without trying. The wolf lunged. Mira shifted. Her silver-white wolf emerged, smaller than her attacker but faster. She dodged the first strike, her teeth finding the enemy's leg. The taste of blood filled her mouth as she tore through muscle. The enemy wolf howled and threw her off. Mira hit the wall hard, stars exploding across her vision. She struggled to her feet, but the other wolf was already charging again. Then Theron was there, his massive black form crashing into Mira's attacker. The fight was over in seconds, brutal and efficient. The enemy wolf lay still, its neck broken. Theron shifted back to human form, blood covering his skin. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Mira shifted too, surprised to find it was true. Theron, this is coordinated. The explosions, the timing. I know. His eyes were hard. Dax has been planning this for months. He's working with the rogues, with wolves from outside my territories. They want to return to the old ways, constant war, territorial battles, the strong dominating the weak. What do? Potly. We end this. He pulled her close, his hand cupping her face. But first, I need you somewhere safe. The royal vault, I'm not hiding while you fight. Mira. No, I'm not just some fragile thing to be protected. She straightened, feeling her wolf settle into place with unusual certainty. I'm your mate, your queen. If you're fighting for this kingdom, then so am I. Pride flashed in his eyes, followed quickly by fear. You could die. So could you. But we're stronger together, aren't we? That's what the mate bond means. He was silent for a long moment, then nodded. Together. But you stay close to me, and if I tell you to run, I'll consider it strongly, she said with a small smile. Despite everything, he almost laughed. Then his expression hardened. We need to get to the Great Hall. That's where Dax will make his stand. He'll want witnesses when he tries to kill me. They moved through the castle corridors, encountering pockets of fighting. Theron's loyal guards were holding their positions, but the attackers outnumbered them. Mira saw wolves she recognized from the gathering, alphas who'd come pretending friendship, now showing their true allegiance. When they reached the Great Hall, the scene was carnage. Bodies lay scattered across the floor, both shifted and human. The massive room was split between loyalists, defending one side, and rebels controlling the other. Dax stood in the center, his wolf form larger than it should be. Silver collar around his neck, unnatural, laced with dark magic that made the air shimmer wrong around him. "There you are," Dax called out, his voice distorted by his enhanced form. "I was wondering if you'd hide or fight." "I don't hide," Theron said coldly. "And you're a fool if you think this will work. Kill me, and Callum becomes king. Kill him and Senna rules. You can't murder your way to a crown." "I don't need a crown," Dax laughed. "I just need you dead. Once you're gone, the territories will fracture. Alphas will fight for dominance. And in the chaos, the strong will reclaim their power, the way it should be." "You mean the way you can profit from?" Mira said, understanding dawning. "You're not doing this for the packs. You're doing it for yourself." "Smart little queen," Dax sneered. "Yes, I'll profit. So will anyone with the strength to take what they want. That's nature, Payape. That's how wolves are meant to live." "That's how wolves destroy each other," Theron corrected. "I've seen it. I've lived through it. And I won't let you drag us back into that darkness." "You don't have a choice," Dax attacked. The fight was brutal. Theron shifted, his massive form meeting Dax's enhanced wolf. They collided with enough force to shake the floor, claws and fangs tearing through fur and flesh. Blood splattered across the stone. Around them, the battle raged. Loyalists fought rebels, the tide shifting back and forth. Mira stayed in human form, using her smaller size to her advantage, staying mobile, helping where she could. She saw Callum take down 2 attackers at once, saw Senna, despite her injured arm, fight with terrifying efficiency, saw Moira, that stern old woman, moving through the chaos like a warrior half her age. But her attention kept returning to Theron and Dax. The enhanced wolf was stronger than he should be, the dark magic in his collar giving him unnatural power. He landed blow after blow, and Theron was slowing, blood matting his black fur. Mira's heart clenched. Through the bond, she could feel his pain, his determination, his fear not for himself, but for her. Asterisk. "I love you, asterisk," she sent through the bond. Asterisk. "Whatever happens, I love you, asterisk." Theron's response was a wave of emotion so intense it nearly drove her to her knees. Then he launched himself at Dax with renewed fury. But the enhanced wolf was ready. He caught Theron mid-leap, his jaws closing around Theron's throat, Patera Mira. "No!" Mira screamed. The world slowed down. She saw Theron struggling, saw Dax's jaws tightening, saw the life beginning to fade from her mate's golden eyes. And something in Mira snapped. Her wolf surged forward with a power she'd never felt before. She shifted mid-run, her silver-white form blazing with light. Not the pale glow she'd always had, but something bright and fierce and ancient. The moon goddess's mark on her spine flared to life, silver light pouring from her like a beacon. And suddenly, she understood the mark wasn't just a seal. It was a gift, a conduit to power, older than packs, older than territories. Mira's wolf, small and supposedly weak, grew in that moment, not in size, but in presence. The air around her shimmered with power, and when she howled, it was with a voice that commanded attention. Every wolf in the hall froze. Even Dax, his jaws still around Theron's throat, went still. Mira stalked forward, and wolves parted before her like a sea. The silver light emanating from her grew brighter, casting the great hall in moon glow. Asterisk. Release him. Asterisk, she sent. Not through pack bonds, those didn't work for her. This was something else, something primal. The voice of the moon goddess herself, channeled through her chosen vessel. Dax's enhanced form began to shake. The dark magic in his collar fought against the silver light, but the ancient power was stronger. His jaws opened, and Theron fell, gasping, to the floor. Asterisk. You sought to destroy what the goddess built. Asterisk. Mira's voice echoed through every mind present. Asterisk. You used dark magic to pervert the natural order. You chose chaos over peace, bloodshed over prosperity. Asterisk. The silver light focused on Dax's collar, and the metal began to glow red-hot. Dax tried to shift back to human form, to claw the collar off, but it was fused to his skin. Asterisk. The punishment for breaking moon oaths is death. Asterisk. Mira continued. Asterisk. The punishment for dark magic is worse. Asterisk. The collar exploded in a flash of silver light. Dax's scream was cut short as his enhanced form collapsed, reverting to human. He lay on the floor, breathing but broken. The dark magic burned from his system. The rebels who'd supported him immediately dropped their weapons, their will to fight destroyed by the display of divine power. Mira turned her glowing eyes to them. Asterisk, leave this place. Return to your territories. Spread the word of what happened here. The Bloodmoon Kingdom stands, and it is protected by more than just an alpha's strength. Asterisk. They fled. The light faded, and Mira shifted back to human form, swaying with exhaustion. Theron was there immediately, catching her before she fell. What? He breathed. What was that? I don't know, Mira admitted. The market, activated, like it was waiting for the right moment. Around them, the loyalists were staring at her with a mixture of awe and fear. Even Callum looked shaken. My queen, one of the alphas said, dropping to his knee. Forgive me for ever doubting your place at the king's side. Power. Others followed, kneeling one by one, said, not because they had to, but because they'd witnessed something they couldn't deny, proof that Mira was exactly where the moon goddess intended her to be. Theron's arms tightened around her. You saved me. We save each other, she corrected. That's what mates do. The aftermath of the rebellion took weeks to sort through. Dax and his co-conspirators were tried and exiled, stripped of their pack affiliations and sent beyond the 7 territories' borders. The alphas who'd supported them faced their own consequences. Some lost their positions. Others had their territories reduced. But through it all, what people talked about most was their queen. Word spread quickly about what had happened in the Great Hall. The defective she-wolf who'd become a conduit for the moon goddess's power. Mira found herself the subject of whispered conversations and awed stares. I don't understand it, she said to Theron one night as they lay in bed, both still recovering from their injuries. Why me? Why now? Because the moon goddess chooses who she chooses, Theron said, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. My mother always said the mark was special, that it would activate when most needed. I think she knew something like this would happen. You think she foresaw the rebellion? I think she foresaw that I'd need someone strong beside me, someone who could wield power without corrupting it. He kissed her temple, someone who could save me from myself. Mira turned to look at him. What do you mean? The war changed me, Mira. Made me harsh, cold. I've done terrible things in the name of peace. Without you. He paused. I was becoming the monster they accused me of being, but you reminded me what I was fighting for. Who I wanted to be. You were never a monster. I was close. His eyes met hers. But you pulled me back. You and your stories and your stubborn refusal to be afraid of me. I was terrified of you. No, you were terrified of the situation, but you never let it make you cruel or bitter. You stayed kind. He cupped her face. That's real strength, and it's what this kingdom needs in a queen. Over the following weeks, Mira settled into her role with growing confidence. She established new protocols for territorial disputes, created a council where alphas could air grievances without resorting to violence, and began working with healers to develop better medical care across all territories. You're transforming the kingdom, Callum observed during one council meeting, in ways even the king couldn't. We're transforming it together, Mira corrected, glancing at Theron. That's how partnerships work. The veil began to lift. Slowly at first, patches of clear sky appearing here and there. Then more rapidly, until one morning, Mira woke to find sunshine streaming through the windows for the first time since she'd arrived. It's gone, she whispered, staring at the clear blue sky. Theron joined her at the window, his arm wrapping around her waist. The veil was born from my darkness, my pain. I think it's lifting because I'm finally healing. Because of me? Because of us. He turned her to face him. You gave me something to believe in again, something to live for beyond duty and law. You gave me hope. Mira's eyes burned. I love you. I know. He smiled. I can feel it. Every day. Through the bond. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. They kissed as sunshine flooded the room, warming skin that had known only cold mist for 5 years. Life fell into a new rhythm. Mornings were spent in council meetings, addressing the needs of the territories. Afternoons Mira used for her own projects. She'd started a library initiative, sending books to rural packs who'd never had access to such things. Evenings belonged to them, to story time by the fire and the quiet intimacy of two people who'd found each other against all odds. Tell me about the girl with the silver wolf, Theron requested one night, his head in her lap as she read. Again? I've told you that one a dozen times. It's my favorite. His eyes were soft as he looked up at her. Because it's us. The rejected girl who turned out to be exactly what the kingdom needed. The dark king who learned to love again. It's our story. And our story isn't finished yet, Mira said, setting down her book. We still have years of adventures ahead. Good. He sat up, pulling something from his pocket. A small box, carefully wrapped. Then you'll need this. Inside was a necklace silver with a crescent moon pendant. But not just any moon. This one was crafted to look exactly like the mark on her spine, down to the smallest detail. Theron, it's beautiful. My mother had it made, he said softly. Before she died, she told me to give it to you on the day the veil lifted. When I was finally healed enough to see clearly again. His hands were gentle as he fastened it around her neck. She believed in us before we even met. Believed that together, we'd be stronger than either of us alone. Mira touched the pendant, feeling its weight settle against her collarbone. I wish I could have met her. She would have loved you, would have loved your stories, your kindness, your strength. He paused. She'd be proud of what you've become. What we've become, Mira corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. The months that followed brought stability the kingdom hadn't known in years. Trade flourished between territories. Disputes were settled through council rather than combat. The old wounds from the northern wars began, slowly, to heal. Moira remained Mira's constant companion and advisor, though she'd softened considerably from the stern woman who'd first greeted her. "You've surprised me, girl," she admitted one afternoon. "I didn't think a village wolf could handle this life. I was wrong." "I had good teachers," Mira said, gesturing to the stack of governance books Moira had assigned her. "Teachers can only do so much. The rest is in here." Moira tapped Mira's chest. "You've got a good heart. That matters more than any lesson." Even Velena, after her recovery and quiet departure from court, sent a letter. It was brief, barely civil, but it acknowledged that perhaps Mira was the right queen after all. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. 6 months after the rebellion, Mira woke feeling strange. Not ill, exactly, but different. Changed in a way she couldn't quite name. "Are you all right?" Theron asked, immediately alert to her discomfort through the bond. "I don't know. I feel." She trailed off, her hand moving to her stomach. Understanding dawned on Theron's face. "Should I call the healer?" The healer confirmed it an hour later. Mira was pregnant. "But I thought..." Mira's voice broke. "They said I was barren. 5 years with Gareth and nothing. They all said..." "They were wrong," the healer said gently. "Or perhaps, like your bond, your body was simply waiting for the right mate." Theron's hand found hers, squeezing tight. Through the bond, she felt his emotions: joy, wonder, fierce protectiveness, and underneath it all, the same disbelief she was experiencing. "A child," he whispered. "We're going to have a child." Mira nodded, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sorrow, but of relief, of joy, of a dream she'd given up on suddenly becoming possible. Quote, "The moon goddess provides," the healer said with a knowing smile. "Perhaps she always intended this, once you found each other." The announcement of the pregnancy sent celebrations rippling through the kingdom. After years of uncertainty, the Bloodmoon line would continue. The future was secure. But more than that, for Mira, it was vindication. She wasn't broken, never had been. She'd simply been waiting for the right time, the right person, the right love. "What should we name them?" Theron asked one night, his hand resting on her still flat stomach. "If it's a girl, I'd like to call her Iris," Mira said, "after the woman who taught me to love stories. And if it's a boy, you choose." Theron was quiet for a long moment. "Aaron. It was my father's name, before he became king. Before the crown hardened him." He looked at her. "I'd like our son to remember that power and kindness can coexist. That being strong doesn't mean being cruel." "Arn," Mira repeated. "I love it." The pregnancy progressed smoothly for the first few months. Mira continued her duties, adjusting her schedule as her body changed. The kingdom was thriving, peaceful in ways it hadn't been for generations. Then, on a cold winter evening, a messenger arrived from the eastern borders. "Your Majesty?" The young wolf gasped, barely able to stand. "The Ironpaw territory Alpha Gareth has amassed an army. He's demanding the return of his mate." The council chamber fell silent. Theron's expression went dangerously still. "His mate is standing right here," Callum said coldly. "And she's carrying the king's child. He claims the bond was stolen, that he never properly released her." The messenger trembled. "It's given you 3 days to return Lady Mira. or he'll march on the capital. Let him come, Theron growled. I'll show him what happens to wolves who threaten my mate. No, Mira said quietly. Every eye turned to her. I'll go to him. Absolutely not. Not to return, she clarified, meeting Theron's furious gaze. To end this properly, he needs to hear from me that our bond was false, that I choose you. If I don't, he'll always have this excuse to cause trouble. He could kill you, Theron said. Or worse, try to keep you. Then come with me. We face him together, show a united front. Mira touched her stomach. I won't let our child grow up in a kingdom threatened by my past. After hours of debate, they agreed. Theron, Mira, and a guard of 20 wolves would travel to the neutral ground between territories to meet with Gareth. The journey took 2 days. They made camp on the third night, and Mira found herself unable to sleep, staring at stars that seemed impossibly bright after months behind the veil. Having regrets? Theron asked, joining her by the fire. Never. But I'm scared. So am I. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. I keep thinking about what my life would be like if I'd waited too long. If you'd actually bonded with Gareth. If I'd never found you. But you did find me. The moon goddess made sure of it. Still, the thought of losing you. His hand rested on her stomach. Losing both of you. It's the only thing I fear anymore. You won't lose us, Mira said firmly. Whatever happens tomorrow, we're stronger together, remember? The meeting place was a clearing marked by ancient stones, neutral ground where no pack could claim dominance. Gareth arrived with his own contingent 50 wolves, all armed, all radiating hostility. Gareth himself looked older than Mira remembered, harder. His eyes when they found her were cold and possessive. Mira, he said, not using her title. You look well. I am well, Gareth. Very well. Playing queen suits you, his lip curled. Though I wonder how long that will last once Bloodmoon tires of his stolen prize. She wasn't stolen, Theron said, his voice deadly calm. She was reclaimed. There's a difference. You crashed my wedding, Pard. A wedding based on a false bond. Theron gestured to Mira. Ask her yourself. Ask her if what she feels for you compares to a true mate bond. Gareth's jaw tightened. Mira, come here. We can discuss this privately. No, Mira said. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of my mate and my king. Your mate, Gareth spat. I was your mate. I took you into my home, gave you status. You gave me obligation, Mira interrupted. A cold bed and colder words. You told your beta you'd barely need to see me once I was bred. Don't pretend our bond was anything but transactional. Gareth's face flushed. I gave you more than you deserved. A defective wolf with no... I'm not defective, Mira said, her voice ringing with certainty. I never was, Persend. My bond simply waited for the right person. She touched her stomach, as did my ability to bear children. The moon goddess knew what she was doing when she marked me for Theron. That's a convenient story. It's the truth. Mira's eyes met his. Gareth, you never wanted me, not really. You wanted an alliance, a womb, a convenient arrangement. There's no shame in that. Many matings are political. But don't pretend you're here because your heart was broken. You're here because your pride was wounded. The clearing was silent. Gareth's wolves shifted uncomfortably. I came to offer you peace, Mira continued. A formal dissolution of the bond we formed. No shame, no blame. We simply acknowledged that it was incomplete, that we weren't meant for each other. You're free to find a mate who truly suits you, and I'm free to build a life with mine. And if I refuse? Gareth's voice was tight. Then you force us into a war neither of us wants, Theron said. A war you cannot win. The 7 territories stand with me, Gareth. If you attack alone. Is your pride worth the destruction of your pack? Gareth stood there for a long moment, pride warring with pragmatism. Finally, his shoulders slumped. Power. The bond is dissolved, he said. Mira of Silverpaw, you are released from all obligations to the Ironpaw Pack. Relief flooded through Mira. Thank you. Quote, don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. His eyes were bitter. I'm doing it because even I can see the moon goddess chose you for him, not me. I just wish. He stopped himself. It doesn't matter. As Gareth and his wolves departed, Mira let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Theron's arms came around her immediately. It's over, he murmured. Finally over. No, Mira corrected, turning to look at him. It's just beginning. Spring came to Bloodmoon territory with unprecedented beauty. Flowers bloomed in colors no one remembered seeing before. The rivers ran clear and cold, and in the queen's chambers, Mira went into labor. You're doing wonderfully, the healer encouraged. Just a bit more. Mira screamed, gripping Theron's hand so hard she thought she might break it. Through the bond, she could feel his panic, his helplessness, his desperate wish to take her pain away. I'm here, he whispered. I'm right here. Hours later, as dawn broke over the castle, a baby's cry pierced the air. A girl, the healer announced, placing the tiny, squirming bundle in Mira's arms. Perfect and healthy. Mira stared down at her daughter at Iris, and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known possible. The baby had Theron's dark hair and Mira's silver eyes, a perfect blend of both of them. She's beautiful, Theron breathed, his finger gently touching Iris's tiny hand. The baby immediately gripped it, and his eyes filled with tears. She's perfect. Like her father, Mira said softly. The kingdom celebrated for a week. Gifts arrived from every territory, some from wolves who'd once questioned Mira's place as queen. Now they sent blessings and toys and promises of loyalty. But the greatest gift came from Mira's family. Her parents arrived with Kaya, all 3 looking nervous. Mira received them in the gardens, Iris sleeping peacefully in her arms. Daughter, her father began, his voice shaking. We came to apologize. For everything. For treating you as less than you were. For selling you to the tax collector. For never seeing me. Mira finished quietly. For making me believe I was broken when I was simply different. Her mother was crying. We were wrong. So wrong. Can you ever forgive us? Mira looked at them. These people who'd shaped her childhood, who'd made her doubt herself, who'd taught her that love was conditional. Then she looked at Iris, sleeping peacefully, and at Theron, standing protectively nearby. I forgive you, she said. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry that anger into my daughter's life. She'll grow up knowing she's loved unconditionally, valued for who she is, not what she can provide. Her father nodded, tears streaming down his face. Thank you. We don't deserve your mercy. Probably not, Mira agreed. But that's what makes it mercy. Kaya stepped forward hesitantly. I'm sorry too, for pretending not to know you, for caring more about what others thought than about my sister. You deserved better. Most werewolf story began with power and team. Yes, I did, Mira said. Then, seeing her sister's devastation, but you were young. We both were. We can start over, if you'd like. Kaya's face lit up. I'd like that very much. As the seasons changed, Mira settled into motherhood with the same determination she'd brought to being queen. Iris grew quickly. a happy baby who seemed to love stories as much as her mother. Mira would read to her for hours, watching those silver eyes track the pages with interest. "She's going to be brilliant," Theron said one evening, watching his mate and daughter. "Just like her mother. Just like both her parents," Mira corrected. "She has your strategic mind. I can see it already. And your kind heart, I hope." Definitely that. On Iris's first birthday, they held a celebration in the Great Hall. The same hall where Mira had once stood terrified, where rebellion had nearly torn the kingdom apart, now filled with joy and laughter. Helena approached Mira, her own daughter toddling beside her. "A year ago, if someone had told me we'd be here peaceful, prosperous, celebrating, I wouldn't have believed them." "Neither would I," Mira admitted. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong." "Maybe nothing will," Helena suggested. "Maybe you've earned your happiness." That night, after the guests departed and Iris was asleep in her nursery, Mira and Theron stood on the balcony overlooking the kingdom. Stars blazed overhead, unobscured by any veil. "Do you ever think about that first night?" Mira asked. "When you crashed my wedding?" "Every day." Theron pulled her closer. "I think about how terrified you looked, how angry, how you stood up to me anyway. I thought you were a monster." "I was, in many ways. You made me human again." "No," Mira said, turning to face him. "You were always human. You'd just forgotten. I just reminded you." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, he said, "Tell me a story, like you used to." And Mira smiled. "What kind of story?" "The true kind, the kind about us." So she did. She told him about a girl who was told she was broken but learned she was simply waiting. About a king who fought monsters only to discover he'd become one, until someone showed him light again. About a moon oath that seemed like a curse but turned out to be destiny. She told him about two people who were stolen from one life and given another, who learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing you never knew you needed. "And they lived happily ever after?" Theron asked when she finished. "They lived," Mira corrected. "Not perfectly, not without challenges, but together, which made every challenge bearable. They loved, they grew, they built something beautiful. And when their daughter asked them years later if they'd change anything, they said no," Theron finished. "Because every moment, good and bad, led them exactly where they needed to be." Exactly. In the nursery, Iris stirred in her sleep, and the crescent mark on her tiny shoulder passed down from mother to daughter, glowed softly in the darkness. The moon goddess's promise, continuing into another generation. Mira looked at it through the doorway and smiled. Her daughter would never be called defective, would never doubt her worth. Would grow up knowing she was loved, chosen, precious beyond measure. That alone made every moment of Mira's journey worthwhile. "Come to bed," Theron murmured. "Tomorrow brings new challenges." Quote, "Tomorrow brings new opportunities," Mira corrected. "That's how queens think." He laughed. "That's how you think, and I love you for it." "I love you too," Mira said. "My monster, my king, my mate." "Your Theron," he corrected. "My Theron," she agreed. And in the kingdom that had once seemed like a prison, in the castle that had once been shrouded in endless mist, the stolen bride and the dark king found their peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because they'd learned the most important truth. That sometimes the promises we never asked for turn out to be exactly what we needed all along. The moon goddess knew what she was doing when she bound their souls together before either could walk. She'd given them each other flawed, broken in different ways, but together, complete. And that, Mira thought as she drifted off to sleep in her mate's arms, was the best story of all. Because it was true.